Welcome to everyone. I hope you've been having a great day so far at the World Summit. I know that I have, and really excited to be here for this workshop where we have Karima Kanji and Lauren Beltroni, both from Nuance, here to teach us about conversational AI and give us some take-home tools to build a project management bot at home. So really exciting stuff. If you guys have questions, please, or comments, anything, please put it all in the chat box that we have. I'll be monitoring that with some colleagues and making sure that some of your questions get answered. If not now, always later too. We can go back and answer some questions. So feel free to put everything in there. I'll say a little bit now just about Karima and Lauren because we're so excited to have them. So Karima is a conversational AI advocate for Nuance's communications mix platform. Really exciting. And then Lauren works in conversation design, loves coding and linguistics, and builds voice assistants and chatbots. So we have a lot to learn from the two of these ladies. Thanks for being here, and I'll pass it off to you guys now.
Hey, so welcome to our workshop. Thanks for that great introduction, Mackenzie. Today we're going to be showing you how to design, code, and test a chatbot. And I'll let Karima share our slides. So introductions.
Yeah.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Karima. And we really want to thank Technovation for giving access to such a program to so many young ladies. Access is so important. My own journey started when I was little in the 1980s, and I got access to a Commodore computer. And the first thing I did is I taught my computer to communicate with me by printing fancy text and by speaking answers to questions that I typed. And later I went on to study electrical engineering, signal processing, including voice recognition at McGill University. And now at Nuance, I get to combine my technical interests with my love of helping people, first as a voice recognition analyst and now as an advocate for Nuance Mix.
Cool. And I'm Lauren. I also got my start kind of in these talking to computer area like Karima. I just always thought linguistics was fun. And I also liked coding. I went to Barnard, which is an all-women's college, and I was part of an agency that taught women how to make websites. And so the idea was you don't need to be a computer science major or a full-time engineer to learn how to code. Really, everyone should know how to code. And that's how I got my start with website design. And I combined my love of linguistics and computer science when I graduated and got a job by working at Nuance making chatbots. So I'm going to start off with a how might we question. This is a design thinking technique to kind of help us keep on track for the workshop. How might we build a Technovation agenda bot? So a few things are implicit in this question. The first is chatbots do a lot. They can tell jokes, they can update your calendar, they can Google stuff for you. And today I'm going to do a very specific chatbot. That's what Karima and I are focused on, that updates a calendar for Technovation. And the reason we decided this is you're our audience and we wanted to make our bot helpful for you. And that's another big principle behind our talk today. That's user-centered design. How can we build something with code that helps the most people possible? How can we help our users? So that's what we're doing today. We want to make your scheduling life a little bit easier. Before I get into the details, I want to talk about what bots look like. So here are some paparazzi pics of bots in the wild. You probably recognize most of these. So there's Alexa. She doesn't have a screen most of the time. You just talk to her. There's Siri. She talks to you and she has a screen and she can show you information. And then these two other ones, one is for Domino's Pizza and one is for Forever 21. I like these examples because Domino's, you can see that there's this huge picture of pizza. You can click buttons to make an order and you can type messages. There's also a microphone so you can talk to it. These are all examples of chatbots. They all have different ways of interacting with people and different ways for people to interact with them. Today, we're going to be building a bot most closely aligned with this Forever 21 one. It has buttons and you can type to talk to it. So before we get too far, I want to kind of talk about a big picture concept, which is AI. And a chatbot is an example of AI, but what does that mean? So you probably know AI stands for artificial intelligence. I think it's a term that can be very kind of confusing or mysterious. And when I was new, thought that you had to have a PhD to do AI, or you had to be a scientist in a lab. But one thing you'll learn today is everyone can do AI, and AI is really just a recipe. It's someone sitting down and thinking, how can we make a computer behave in a way that's kind of human? And that's what you do with conversation design, which is the building of chatbots. We call it conversation design. So you'll learn a lot more about what AI looks like in this context. What is conversational AI? Like I said, it's kind of a recipe. It has different ingredients that make up this being that seems like a human, but it's a computer. So the first ingredient is the NLU. That's an abbreviation for natural language understanding. It's kind of a mouthful, so we call it NLU. And the NLU is just a statistical model that understands what you say and type. Statistical just means it uses math and probability, and it's trying to understand when you say something like, what do we have scheduled for next week? What do you mean by that? Who is we? When is next week? When is this week? All of those questions have to be answered by the NLU. And you do that by basically writing a lot of different sentences and telling the AI, this is what each sentence means. So you'll see how we do that later on. The second ingredient is dialogue logic. So this is a lot of conditional if-else statements. If you say A, then the bot does B. But if you say C, then the bot does E. And on and on and on until you have this complex flow of interaction that can handle all different types of questions and inquiries that users may or may not say. And then the third ingredient is data. I think this is the magic part. When we think of AI being really magical, data lets it be magical because it's actually helping you. It's connecting with warehouses of information that make your life easier. So the coolest part of our presentation, I think, is at the end, you'll see our bot actually talking to the Technovation calendar and making updates to it so that your team can stay organized. So who makes these things? Like I said before, you don't have to be a mad scientist to make chatbots, AI. All types of people do this. And one of the roles is conversation designer. That's what I do. It's writing what the bot says, but also thinking about what users will say to it and how the bot will respond. There's another role called speech science, which is way more focused on how users talk to the bot. And so they look at big quantities of data to see ways to improve the bot's understanding. And then there's also back-end engineers who are focused on making the bot talk to data. So they can look at lots of different types of data and make it so that the bot can present that information and make updates to a user's profile. There's also front-end developers who get to think about fun stuff like, what does the bot look like? How do the messages look? Will there be pictures? Will you be able to interact with it? So they're focused more on the visual component as well as how the bot is sitting in the app or sitting on the website. And then the last person on this slide is you, because anyone can make a bot. Our mix tool that we're going to show you is for DIYers who are problem solvers who want to put on all these hats and make a bot themselves. So Karima, how would you start building a bot?
Oh, thanks. Good question. So I always start with a good brainstorm. So you know what? Let's get started all together. Let's ask ourselves, what will our chatbot do? Imagine a chatbot that knows all about the Technovation 12-week agenda. What would you say to it? What would you ask of it? What answers would you expect? Well, the Technovation agenda we know is separated into weeks and it's separated into activities. So it's time for a little bit of participation from everyone now. In the chat, write a sample question and a sample answer based on the first week of activities shown here. And let's see what you imagine, right? What would you say to a bot who knows about this first week of activities? So write down a question you would ask it, write out an answer that you think it would give, and keep thinking about it and keep your answers coming. If you want some inspiration, here's what we imagined. So we imagined a couple of scenarios to begin with. On the right side, you're going to see what the bot says, and on the left side, you're going to see what we ask of it. So the bot should be able to give us a greeting. We should be able to say something like, add a goodbye party to week 12. And then once we do that, the bot should be able to answer, okay, I did it. It should be able to go to the agenda and add the thing. We should also be able to say something like, when is market research? And the bot would say, market research is on week 2, because it went and was able to find that information and is able to communicate it to us. So once we had our idea, we were ready to build our bot. This was just the main idea, but at this point, we're like, okay, we know a couple of the things the bot should do. We're ready to build it. So, Lauren, when you build a bot, how do you organize your bot building steps?
It's a great question. I like to think of it as 4 building blocks, and I'm going to give you a high-level description of each one, and then we're going to talk specifically about what each building block means. So the first building block is the NLU. Again, that's the abbreviation for Natural Language Understanding, which is our tool, has a way to test your flow to see if, one, there are warnings or errors that are stopping the code from compiling. And also you can test the feel. Do I like the way this message looks when I see it actually on the screen? Because I think when you design something in your head, it may seem one way. And when you see it actually in a chat bot, it feels totally different. So the third building block is an important phase to kind of check your own work and make sure you're happy with it before the final building block, step 4, is the integration working, which is a fancy way of saying, are we ready for deployment? Which is another way of saying, is our bot connecting with our data?
That's right. And that is really the fun part, because once you get everything connected and everything working and the front end works, you have your chatbot and you can play with it and you can ask questions. And that's really the most fun part. And well, hey guys, would you like to just skip to the end result right now and see what the final bot looks like? Let's do it. Let's just see the final result. So here's the amazing final product that we made. It understands natural language, but it also has some buttons and selectables, and it helps you along the way, and it understands a few things. So let's go. Let's see it in action. So here it gave me a little greeting. It gave me some choices. I clicked on Find Activity. I clicked on week 2, and it gave me the agenda for week 2, and it made it pretty too. The next, I think I decided to type a question. I asked, when do we learn about artificial intelligence? So I wanted to ask about this one, but I wrote it out in a different way than it's written there. And it understood me. And it gave me a blurb about week 2. So the next thing I did is I said, I want to add making a mix bot to the agenda. And it asked me, okay, when do you want to add it? And I said, well, I want to add it to week 2. This time I typed week 2 and it still understood that. And it asked me for more information. It said, okay, so describe the activity. So I wrote a little description. It asked me who I am. So I said, okay, I'm a mentor. And my add calendar function kicked in and it worked. It said, okay, I added it. So let's check. Let's see if it really worked. What's happening in week 2? And look at this list. Making a mix bot is on the list and it totally works. So this is what we're trying to give to you as a starting point, and then you can make it your own afterwards. So our goal for today is to walk you through all the 4 building blocks so that you can have your own Technovation bot linked to your own group's agenda. Are you ready? Let's get set up. So when you do this at home, you're going to need the 4 files on the left, right here, and you're going to open 3 browser tabs on the right. And we'll let you know when we need to use each of those things. And if you have any trouble, you can drop us a line in the Mix forums. We're always there. And that's it for the setup. This is the setup you're going to start with at home. All right. So today we're going to be building our bot with a tool called Nuance Mix. This is Nuance's DIY chatbot tool that you can access for free with a school or a company email address. Now, what's cool about Mix? Why do we like using Mix? Well, it's super versatile. And there's really a lot of functions that you can explore and tweak because it's really made by the experts in the conversational AI field. A Mix bot can use chat, it can use voice, it can be deployed anywhere, like on a web page or on a smart device, like all the different kinds of bots that Lauren showed you at the beginning. You can have it seamlessly continue conversations when you switch between devices and when you switch between communication methods and switch between languages. And so it's really, really powerful. Today, our chatbot is going to use text and HTML, and we're going to run it in the cloud on a web page. So your first step to building this bot is really just to create an account in Nuance Mix. So go to this address right here and sign in. All right. So today we're going to show you just enough to get set up in Mix and to have this bot. But if you want to learn more, there's plenty of resources. Once you're inside Mix, check out the Learn tab. It has a whole bunch of videos and they're really great. You can also participate in the forums by clicking here. And you can also use the documentation by clicking over there. So there's plenty of ways to learn all about making chatbots in Mix. And hey, Lauren, what's your favorite way of learning?
Well, I really like posting on the forum. That's the little B arrow, the first icon. I think it's a really good way to get help quickly, but also to practice the skill of explaining what you're confused about. I find that sometimes when you sit down and write exactly what you can't figure out, you actually learn the answer just by writing out what you're confused about. So whenever I'm stuck, I post on the forum. And I just want to add, no one is born knowing Mix. Everyone learns it and everyone starts as a novice. So don't be afraid to ask your question. People respond right away and it's a very helpful community.
And I just wanted to add that we're going to go pretty fast today, but we're going to make these slides available. And so you're going to be able to follow all these steps at home afterwards and get your bot going.
So once you make a Mix account, congratulations, you can work in Mix. And the first thing you need to do is create a project. So on the Mix dashboard, that's what this page is called, there's this little plus sign on the middle right-hand side of the screen. And when you press it, you get all these options. Think of this as the paparazzi pick slide. This is lots of different types of chatbots you can make. Today, we're making a web chat project. So I'm clicking that and I'm using all the default settings. And then I'm going to name it Technovation Bot. And we have this stated in the agenda, in the appendix at the end of this slideshow. It's important that you choose the same settings as we do because we're having you import files into your project. So make sure if your import doesn't work, it probably is because you didn't choose web chat project. Just make sure that you did that step correctly. And your new project should be will be listed on the left-hand side. Right, there's lag. Okay. Okay.
All right. My turn. Great. So now that you have your project, it looks like we're ready to follow the 4 main building blocks of bot design. So do you remember what the 4 building blocks were? Here's a refresher. So we start with the natural language. Then we build out the dialogue logic. Then we test everything before connecting it to live data. And then we deploy, connect it to the live data and the live front end. All right. So first, let's focus on natural language understanding with Lauren.
Okay. So this is building block number 1. What will users say? I want to make this clear. I'm always tempted to start with the dialogue. Like, what will the bot say? Hey, I'm the Technovation agenda bot. How will it ask for what you want to do? How will it respond? I get excited about that, but the real good way to start a project is with what will users say? It's this idea of user-centered design. We want to think really in the shoes of our user and write down all the types of things they might say to our chatbot. So that's going to be the focus of our first building block. Back to our sample interaction. Remember, the bot is on the right and the user is on the left. You see that I've marked up some of these user sentences. So after the bot says hi, the user says, add goodbye party to week 12. There's a few things going on in this sentence. They're telling us what they want to do. That's called the intent. Add goodbye party. They're adding an activity. There's goodbye party, which is a specific event that they want to add. So I put that in another color. And then to week 12, they gave another piece of information, week 12, when the activity will be. It's very plausible that the person wouldn't give week 12. So when we're doing our NLU, we always want to think about edge cases. So what if the person just said add goodbye party? Is that enough information for our bot to do the backend update? No, because we need to put the activity on a specific week. So that's a good example of add goodbye party to week 12 versus add goodbye party period. Those are both great sentences that our bot needs to know. Another sentence from the user is when is calculating revenue? That's the way I might phrase my question, but people could phrase that in infinity ways. Which week is calculating revenue? Do you know when calculating revenue is? Is it this week? And so on. So calculating revenue is another example of a specific Technovation activity, but there are dozens of them. So the NLU needs to know lots of different types. And on this next slide, I've zoomed in even farther, and I'm showing you how each word is understood by our natural language understanding model. So add is in pink, and I think of this as the, I see a question in the chat. It says we need a business email. You can use a school email. So add is our intent. We call intents what the user wants to do. And it's add activity. That's how I would sum it up. So I'm labeling add as add activity. We know what the user wants to do. Well, what activity do they want to add? That's goodbye party. We call this an entity. It's a word that means a piece of information the user's giving about their intent. So goodbye party is the activity they want to add. So I'm going to call it activity title ENT to remind us that it's an entity. It's a piece of information. And then week 12, similar, it's a piece of information they're tacking on. It's an entity. And I'm going to call it week ENT. When is calculating revenue? That's the other user utterance. So we know when is a way of asking like find activity. So that's the intent. I want to find something on the calendar. And calculating revenue is a specific piece of information pertaining to that intent. So we're going to call it an entity topic ENT. And like I said, we need to think of lots of different ways of saying this same thing. And we need to show our bot that all of these similar sentences mean I want to find the activity calculating revenue. And these underlines I'm putting on the screen, these are ways of teaching the AI exactly that. So by annotating, clicking on these words and mix, you'll see the interface soon. You're able to teach your robot, your bot, how to talk.
That's right. And then the more varied the sentences we collect, the better our NLU model will be. So vary your examples. And now that you know a little bit more about the type of sentences we need, go back to writing a couple more sample sentences in the chat. Use a variety of topics and weeks from your agenda. That means use a variety of entities. Think of completely different ways of asking the same thing and ask for different things. That means vary your intents. The sentences that you're going to be writing in the chat are precious. because you're going to be able to collect them later. And you're going to use them for training your bot. And you can use some sentences for training, but you can also use some other sentences for testing to see, well, how good is it when it sees something that it hasn't seen before. And this exercise that you're doing is called bootstrapping data. So try to write down different ways of asking for information or asking for um, the bot to do something, and all of those sentences are going to be important for you to be able to make the bot better once you have your hands on it. Now, since we want to get you set up really quickly, we're not going to show you how to enter all the intents and entities one by one. You can easily find out how to do that in the Learn tab videos. So what we did is we brought you a shortcut to get you started. So what we're going to do is we're going to import the whole starter NLU model that we started with, and including all the intents and all the entities and a bunch of annotated sentences for each intent. Here goes. I'm going to show you the video. There's also a tiny summary on the top right. So here from the dashboard, I click on NLU. Sorry, we're doing the import. Sorry. You find the import export tab, and then you find the NLU line, and you click on the TRSX. And the TRSX is the little file that we provided at the beginning. And as soon as you choose it, it gets imported, and that's it. Your whole NLU model now exists in Mix. All right. So what does that look like? That's when you go and click on that NLU tab I was talking about. Once you click on the NLU tab, you see that there's stuff in it now. Before it was empty. And you're going to see that this side is for intents. And let's click on my little video. And I checked for my intents in the NLU tab. I see that there's a few of them here. There's samples in each one. That means that there's sentences in each one. I clicked on this blue train model so that I can actually use it. I can train with this data that I imported. There's entities on the right side. I clicked on the weak entity to see what's in it. And it says different ways of saying the same thing. So different ways of saying week 10. So that was pretty cool. Then I looked at the topic entity, and it has my topic value on the right and then different ways of saying a topic on the left. And then I looked and I'm like, business plan. Maybe someone will just say business. So I wrote another way of asking for business plan there, and it got added right away, and I can train it. And then once I'm happy with the data that's in here, I can actually try it out later. And before I do that, I can look at the sentences that we have in our intents. So here I have my find activity intent, and I've tagged some weeks on there. I've tagged some topics. And here I clicked on the try button, and then I'm putting in something that I never put in before. I'm going to say, what is happening on the 20th? And what did the bot do? It assigned an intent to this sentence, and it said, hey, this week is ambiguous. And it was pretty spot on. And the score is not 100%. So I'm going to click on add sample, and that sentence is going to go right into our sample set. It's going to make our NLU better. So the next time somebody asks something like that, it's going to guess the intent with an even bigger score. And so building a great NLU model really requires collecting and annotating a lot of good data. Ultimately, like a deployed bot would have thousands of sentences training it. And when you start collecting data, you use some of that data to train the model, and then you use another part of that data that you haven't trained with to test the model to see how well your training is doing. And Mix also has a mechanism called the Discover tab. And once your bot is deployed, you can collect live data, and then you can go through this whole cycle. And you can train with some of the data, you can test with some of the data, and then you can improve your bot using real live data from the users that have tried your bot. So that's it for the first building block.
Okay, so exciting. We're on the second building block now. My favorite one, how will our bot respond? This is the dialogue portion. So here I'm going to show you really high level what our Technovation bot will look like. And I do this phase when I'm doing any design. It's a diagramming phase that kind of helps me learn. But before I can do the diagram, I need to show you what the different symbols mean. So when we're working in Mix and we need to make this diagram of our dialog flow, the tools we have in our toolkit are nodes. A node is a way of saying a state in code, and each of the nodes or states does different things. So I'm going to go one by one and give you a little information about when to use these nodes. Question and answer, that's the first one. It's 2 chat bubbles. That's what you use when you're asking a question. So when the bot says, I'm listening, and it's expecting you as the user to say something back, you need a question and answer node. There's also a message node. That's when the bot is just giving information to the user and not explicitly asking a question. So this is the day the event is. It's a declaration of information. A decision node is where you check variables and set conditions. So like I said, there's a lot of logic in dialogue design. If A, then B. You do that in decision states. There's also a data access node. This is a fun one. It helps you look up information from data warehouses elsewhere. And then the question router node is kind of an AI intelligent node that helps you collect multiple pieces of information. So like I said, an entity is just a piece of information. So basically a question router node helps you collect lots of entities at once. And the intent mapper is a similarly intelligent node that's helping you route the intents, what the user wants to do, to the right part of the code or to the right flow. And our code today is going to be organized in components, which are basically just little placeholders for where the flow is explained and designed. So you can kind of organize your bot using these components. And then the last node does something very specific. External actions helps you end the interaction. So if you say goodbye to the bot, it says, okay, I'm done now. So here's a diagram that we can make now that we know what these shapes mean. The rectangle at the top, hey, I'm the Technovation agenda bot. I did that in a rectangle because it's just a message. I'm not asking for any information. It's going to, there's this little arrow pointing to a curved rectangle. Go ahead, I'm listening. Here I'm asking for input. I'm asking for information. So I'm using a question and answer node. I'm going to go on the right side path. So here, let's imagine the user says, add goodbye party. So add goodbye party, the intent is add activity, and we don't know which week they want to add it to. So I'm going to ask in this curved rectangle to which week, question and answer node, because we're asking for a piece of information. They say week 12. And yay, I get to go to a data access node where I say, update the backend to add this new activity to week 12. And then I go to a rectangle again. This is a message state where I play information. Okay, I added goodbye party to week 12. And then this is kind of a concept you may be familiar with from coding. A return goes back to where you came from. So we go back to this question, go ahead, I'm listening. And I like dialogue design because you get to think of a fun way to say this in another way. So you don't want to always repeat the same thing. So maybe you say, what next? Or is there anything else I can help you with? That's the sort of thing you're doing in this phase. I see a really good question from Yanira. So a question router is a group of entities. That's a good way to think of it. Yes, it's kind of like a brain that says, I'm listening for you to say some of these entities. You might give me one, you might give me two. The example we always use is you're going to Starbucks and you say, hey, I want a venti drink. Well, what venti drink do you want? What flavor? Do you want milk in it? Da, 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 da. So the question router node is kind of like managing this information and only asking you for the size if you didn't give the size in your initial statement. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so now we can build out this flow and mix. So I showed you what the shapes mean, how the shapes would look in a diagram just in PowerPoint, and now this is the shapes actually in Mix. So I drag out a message state for my greeting, and then I'm connecting it to a question and answer node for my question. And I'm going to name things as I go because I like doing this. So the message state is called play greeting, and I'm writing out my greeting. Hey, I'm the Technovation agenda bot. And once the greeting plays, we always go to our question. So I'm going to label my transition always. And we always go to this question and answer node where we ask for intent. What do you want to do? Well, we're being conversational, so I'm not going to explicitly ask this question, but I will say, go ahead, I'm listening. And that's when we're expecting a response. So what's the user input? You go into the user input section and you connect it to our NLU. So this is exciting. We've connected building block 1 to building block 2. And now our NLU is going to an intent mapper called map intent. This is one of those special nodes that makes it really easy for you to understand what the user just said. So we have these different intents here: add activity, ambiguous activity, and everything's connected. So if I want to just rename something cosmetically, if I do that here, it's going to change in my NLU. The building blocks are totally together. And now I can use these fancy drop downs to say, make a component for this intent. Make me a component for this intent. And this is just organizing my code for me. So it's generating these little pockets where design flows will go. So I have one for each and every intent that I plan to work on. And I know this is fast. We're going to give you this information in the deliverable, in the bit.ly link, so that you can import this. But I just want to give you an idea for how to get this done. So the last thing I do is this return. So once you actually do the thing you asked for, you added your activity, I'm going to a decision state that says, did this user like give another intent that they wanted to do as they were adding their activity? And so I'm going to say this is a check intent. It's a decision state because I'm doing logic. And like I said, I'm not going to show you all of how the sausage is made. So I'm going to end here, but that's kind of your main flow that we designed.
And guys, did you notice some great coding habits that Lauren has? She always gives good names to her nodes. And you should always name your transitions. You should always put notes to explain the more complicated interactions. That way, when somebody else gets your code, they can also work with it and collaborate with you. So as Lauren said, we're going to get you set up quickly. And we're not going to show you how to enter all these nodes, but we're going to show you how to import the dialog, just like we imported the NLU. So once again, you're going to go into the dashboard. You're going to click on the imports area like this. And then you're going to scroll down to the dialog section, click on JSON, find the file that we gave you with a JSON extension, and click open. And that's it. The dialog is now loaded.
I like this question we just got. If user is asking questions not from Technovation, what can we do? I like to think of this as an edge case. Another way to say that is recovery behavior. You make a chatbot to tell jokes and someone says, sing me a song. Well, the chatbot doesn't sing a song. So that's a fun part of dialogue design. You have to think of what to tell the user. Well, I didn't understand that. I can only do this. So part of design is working through all these edge cases. If someone isn't using the bot the way you intend, you do have to think about that as you're making your design.
And you want to answer gracefully. You don't want to keep saying, I don't understand, right? So we do think of these edge cases. And at this point, we're ready for the third building block because our NLU and our dialog are ready. and we want to validate our design and make sure that this works. And you guys asked this question at the right time, because this is where I thought about all the fringe cases. And you guys thought of that at the same time, because I think you're really getting into it. And so what I did during this testing phase is this is where I added some additional features to the bot. I made sure that the bot would gracefully handle cases where a user would request a topic or a time frame that doesn't really exist in the vocabulary. I also added some more test sentences in the NLU so that the bot would learn what a fringe request can sound like. And so Mix also has this great validation tool that doesn't only show you the errors, but the errors are clickable, and it takes you to the right node where the error is so that you can fix it right away. And so that was pretty easy for me to do. I got the bot to 0 errors. And then this is where I went into the dialogue after Lauren had finished with it. And I also tried the try button. There's the try button on the top over there. And I tested out the dialogue bot design. And this try mode doesn't really test what the final bot will look like. It tests the messages that would be exchanged between the user, the bot, and the data in the agenda. So in try mode, the message nodes write out HTML code and formatting code for us to inspect. And it's not going to look pretty yet. But if the HTML code is good, then later the text in the deployed bot will also look pretty good. Now, in the same way, the try mode that we're going to be using right now does not communicate with any outside data. So it doesn't know everything about the Technovation calendar yet. So it can't access the agenda from here. Instead, what it does is it uses simulated or pretend data that we enter ourselves when we test the dialogue. So once we're happy with the formatting of the simulated data, what we're going to do is we're going to take this data that we're going to simulate with right here, and then we're going to give it to a programmer. And we're going to tell her, hey, this is the information that I'm going to send you when the bot is live. Take it. And then this is the information that I want you to return. So if I'm asking you about an activity, go to the calendar and give me back the information about the activity, give it back in this format. And please write a function that does that and place it in the cloud at the same place where my bot will live. So let's see it in action. So here I click the try button, and it does a validation step getting started. My bot, it tells me what nodes it's passing through. And so reading that comes out, trying add intent. And so it asks information, but you know that it's not going to actually send that information and package it up into the message that it would send to the back end. And so I'm going to, at the end of this add interaction, coded message. Information here, I'm going to say who added the activity. It was the mentor. And then watch what happens. This message right here. This is the coded message that I'm going to give to the programmer to say, hey, kind of information I'm going to send you. When I send you this information, add something to the calendar. In the same way, I'm going to say, hey, I want to find an activity. So the bot is going to say, okay, what activity do you want to look for? Now it doesn't have access to the actual calendar. So what is it going to give back to me? I'm going to simulate what comes back from the back end. So I'm writing a set of data right here and saying, okay, pretend this is the data that came back to me. What would you do then? So the bot takes the pretend data, packages it up into a message saying, okay, this is the kind of message I hope that your backend program is going to give me. And when I get that message, I'm going to print out, all right, here's your activity. So this is how we simulate data. All right. So that's it for the third building block. Once we've played in the try mode enough and we know what kind of messages are going to be exchanged, we just take that information and those little blocks of messages that we created and we give them to our backend programmer so that our live bot works.
Okay. So we're at an exciting point in our building blocks. We are on the last building block now. Deployment. Is the integration working? So once we do this building block, we'll be able to actually see our bot in action. So the first step to this building block is signing up with Airtable. This should be a breeze for all of you. It's just going to airtable.com, making a free account, and choosing Excel when you get to this pop-up, have an existing project. Yes, we made an Excel spreadsheet for you. The Excel spreadsheet should look really familiar. It's the Technovation agenda calendar in spreadsheet form. So each row is an activity. For example, storing data locally has a row for itself, and then each column is an attribute of that activity. And we've added some embellishments like scheduled by. So when you're adding a new event, you can say, it is I, Lauren, who scheduled it. And image, those we took from the website. It just makes the bot a little bit more visual. So the next step is getting ready to connect our Airtable to our mix design. And the way we're going to do that is using a TXT file. You can do it in a notepad, you can write it down, but I think having it copy pastable is the easiest way to do it. So basically we're getting information from Airtable and from Mix so that we can connect the two. And we have an appendix slide for this because it's very specific. You only do it once, but you need these 3 credentials, tokens, pieces of information from Airtable: account, resource table, and Airtable API key. So you can look at that appendix 5 slide to find out how to get that information from Airtable. And once you fill that out, you can add the Airtable credentials into Mix. So this is exciting. You're actually telling Mix about Airtable. You're saying, hey, we have this data in a warehouse in Airtable. Will you talk to it? And by pasting in these pieces of information, which you're keeping on your little TXT notepad, you can watch Mix in action and watch your bot actually work. I see a question from Yanira. Does authentication is the only security that can be implemented in a bot? There's so much to talk about in terms of authentication. Every use case needs different levels of security. We are very low security with this bot. As you can see, if someone malicious got the link, as I saw someone asked in the chat, that's a great question. Yes, they could be adding all sorts of weird activities to your agenda. So post on the forum about that, I would say, and we'll give you more information.
Yeah, and you're going to also see that there's not just that, there's an API key. You can regenerate your API key. You can keep that safe, and then people won't be able to add to your agenda. So really, the security in this bot depends on Airtable. So whatever mechanisms Airtable has for security is what we are implementing here in our bot. Okay, so now our bot is designed. And we're ready to package it and send it out into the real world. And to do that, there's 3 things we do. We build, and so we build the MLU and the dialog. We make a configuration to use on the web, and then we deploy on the cloud. And so here I'm going to show you this really quickly, but you can come back to it and see how I did it. So the first step is click on the Manage tab dashboard and click on Build. MLU and the dialog is right now. And we choose the dialog, click on Build, and then we wait for the build to actually become. So one build is complete, a whole bunch of sentences, and a build takes a little. Let's wait till that's complete. In the meantime, that would happen application section. Config, we click the little plus sign up and configure it. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to name our configuration and then that context, writing it down in our notepad. So this is the context tag that we're inventing. We remember it, and we're going to choose our project. We're going to choose the version of the dialog that we're using. So I went back and checked that I know what my project name is. I went and checked that, okay, I just made a V1 version 1 of my NLU build, just made a version 1 of my dialog. All right, I'm ready to deploy this app config. My configuration is done. Now I'm going to click on Azure, which is a place on the web where I can deploy. And I am deployed, my bot is now available in the cloud. Okay, what does that mean? How is my web page going to know that my bot is in the cloud? Well, this is where I go back to my text file and I collect some information from my Mixbot to be able to give it to my web page client. And how to do that is shown in Appendix 6 when you get this slideshow, and you can easily follow it. So now that our notepad has all the bot credentials, let's go to the CloudBot Client website. And that's the address right here that you're going to go to. When you go to this URL, you're going to enter the things that you put into your notepad, which is the client ID and the client secret. And then the replace me is where you're going to put the context tag you created. There's another replace. You click. Once you click Save, you click on Dialog as a Service, and then you get to the second configuration page. Why is there a second configuration page? Well, you remember on the notepad, there was one more piece of Airtable info that we haven't used. And you guys were asking about security. We enter the Airtable API key at the last minute right before using the bot. This gives you a chance to go and regenerate a new API key so that nobody else can just take what you had built before and add things to your calendar. This is where we add the API key. This is the secret that Airtable gives us to keep our app secure. And the way we add it in this step is we put the name of the key, which is Airtable API key, by clicking plus on the start data. Then we want to put in the value. So we click on the edit here, and then we paste our key. And now when we click on the button down here, our bot's going to launch. It's actually going to launch. We're ready to see it in action. And here you go. The chatbot is on the right side. It's launched. It's on the web. And let's just sit back and watch it work. Okay, there's some fringe cases in there too. So I asked, hey, when's the farewell party? And it said, hey, I don't have that in my bot. Do you want to add it? And I said, yes. And I chose, what did I choose? I said 12. And it said, okay, I'm going to add your farewell party to week 12. Give me a description. So I wrote a description. And then I said, okay, I'm a member. And it said, okay, member, got it. And there you go. It went and added it. And then I checked the Airtable after that. And yeah, it had a new row in it. And it had the farewell party in it. So now I asked, hey, what's happening in the 8th week? And there you go. It gave me a really nice HTML printout of whatever is happening in the 8th week. And then it asks me, what's next? And so I said, okay, what are all the start dates? And it gave me all the start dates. And you guys can personalize that to put in your own start dates. Here I made a typo. I said, hey, when will we learn to submit without the U? And it still understood me because the AI is getting smarter now. And so here I said, it said, what next? And I said, okay, are we recording this week? And the app came back and he said, hey, recording your pitch happens in week 10. What else did I ask it? I said, what happened last week? Well, we haven't taught the bot to understand last week. So again, it gives me all the week start dates and it tells me to choose a valid week number. All right. Is there a session on money? Well, it understood that I'm talking about calculating revenue because I put different ways of saying the same thing in there. And then I asked, hey, what's going on in week 3? And in week 3, I see that at some point I had tested this with an end of year party in week 3, and it still has it there because my Airtable had it. And there you go. The bot works. It's super satisfying to watch it work. So I hope you guys really want one yourself. And then we have a little bit of time for questions. The slideshow is available for you to download from right here. There's a couple more slides after this with tips for personalizing your bot. If that's not enough, please join the Mix forums and come and ask your questions in the forums. And we really hope to see you there. Lauren, you can say a couple of words. I'm going to just show you the next slide so that they get recorded in this session so that you can go back to it. Make it yours. How to add a new topic. How to keep improving your bot's NLU. Make sure your settings match ours. Collect the Airtable credentials, that's a little video. And then get credentials from Mix. That's also a little video that you're going to have in the slideshow that you're going to download. All done.